I'm Mel.
I'm Sarah.
And I'm Beck. And this is We Are Woman.
Today's conversation is with Mel, and her story is a little different to the big origin or transformation arc we often hear. Mel has spent many years working behind the scenes in a physiotherapy and psychology clinic, holding a role that touches almost every layer of the business, from operations and systems to bookkeeping and logistics. But just as importantly, the relational and cultural fabric of the team. A huge part of Mel's work has been about holding people, clinicians, staff, and leaders, and navigating the emotional and nervous system and the human dynamics that live underneath workplaces, performance, and leadership. Alongside this professional role, Mel lives the reality that many women do, moving between being a mother, a partner, a leader, a sister, and a friend, holding multiple responsibilities and often carrying more than is visible on the outside. As we've been exploring across this season, we've explored topics like safety, embodiment, feminine leadership, and what it really means to soften without collapsing. Mel's journey offers a grounded, everyday lens, not through single defining moments, but through noticing the small ways that we women learn to override ourselves in order to keep everything moving. In this episode, Mel shares how she slowly realized she wasn't losing herself in one dramatic way, but in subtle, ordinary moments of self-abandonment. And how coming home to herself didn't come through a big breakthrough or breakdown, but through learning to listen again to her body, her breath, and the quiet signals she had been ignoring for years. This conversation is about what happens when capable, functional women carry a lot, and how remembering yourself doesn't require a radical life shift or change, but can begin through awareness, softness, and choosing differently in tiny everyday moments. Thank you for being here. We are so glad you're here for this conversation with Mel. Okay, Mel. Yeah, we've walked together for several years now in our own personal coaching and inquiry journey that we did in a one-on-one setting, and
Yes.
in some retreats that you've joined as well. And that's kind of transitioned from being in a one-on-one space with you into retreat spaces with you into now really sharing as practitioners, really, and sharing how, seeing how you've come to the forefront from being more on the student role, so to speak, which obviously always continues. We're always students, but also really showing up at this work in the world and being a practitioner yourself. And I just want to kind of ask, where are you today? What feels most alive for you as you sit here? And how do you feel this morning and this week? And also, yeah, where are you today in terms of how you feel within yourself? What feels most potent and meaningful?
Yeah, thank you so much, Sarah. And thank you so much for that reflection on our time together. What's most alive for me today as I sit here would be slowing down. And slowing down feels like a self-love at the moment. It's a way to love myself. It's, yeah, like a being able to hold myself in real time, in the good times, in the messy times, in the uncomfortable times, just feeling less urgency, I think. There has been in the past an urgency to always fix something or to get somewhere. So I think at the moment what I'm really, feeling into is just that the capacity to stay with myself as I am. Yeah, and just trusting that that's okay, and I don't need to be anything else, and I don't need to prove my work, yeah, or my worth.
Mm. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, beautiful. I can definitely relate to that. And I hear also from many clients that this real desire to slow down and to do a bit less and to declutter and so on and to simplify life so to
Mm,
speak. And at
mm.
the same time, I hear a lot of people also just really struggling with that, to actually embody that and lean into that slower pace of life. And so yeah, my curiosity sits in, what do you feel like has helped you most in order to actually feel, yeah, safe enough to really slow down and to simplify your life in that way? What has allowed you to really do that in a practical and maybe a psychosomatic way?
Yeah, I think I mean, and I know we'll get into this later in our chat, but I can definitely say that the devotion to this work that we're all practitioners in here, the three of us, to FBR breath work, that has allowed me, by consistently showing up to the breath work, it's allowed me to be able to sit in myself regardless of what's coming up. And I know that that was required to enter that place from a space of a somatic level or through the body. Through the mind, I knew that I needed to slow down, and I was aware of, how fast I've been going, or all the things I have to do, or the functions and the roles that I perform. But I just wasn't quite able to get there. So I can honestly say that doing breath work has allowed me to feel what it feels like to slow down and to stay with myself. But speaking more practically, sort of on an everyday level, I think the biggest thing, it does go back to the breath, but it's just stopping and taking a breath, having a moment, and then I realize, oh, I don't I can slow down. There's not a panic. I don't have to quickly, urgently push through this, that there is safety here and I can stop. And I think it's really important to do that within what you're capable of at the time. I'm not suggesting that I sit down for 10 minutes in nothing. Sometimes what's all that's available is one breath, but that's all it takes. Yeah, just to slow down and realize that is this actually urgent, or do I need to be slightly ahead of myself all the time? Yeah, I
Mm.
think it would be that. Yeah, and just
Yeah.
releasing the tension in the body, I think. I think there can be this low grade tension that comes with an urgency or a need to keep going and need to keep moving. So noticing that first and then just taking a breath. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I know we've done also a lot of work on this together in the one-on-one space, and then on retreats, and then also during the practitioner training, where
Mm.
we really worked a lot on sort of elongating the exhale, right? And that for
Yes.
me has been also really big work on actually elongating the exhale and just allowing this more surrender and this flow and rest into life. And yeah, what comes up for me is kind of what I'm hearing in your story as well, is once we start to feel more safe with these different parts within ourselves, and we know it's actually safe to feel ourselves, we don't maybe have to run. Because what are we
Mm.
running from, right? When there's this sense of urgency or this sense of hurry, where are we going or where are we running from? And so that's kind of what I'm hearing as you share your words, which is that there's a more inclusion of different parts of yourself, and in that maybe less of a need to run so much from
Mm.
yourself in some way.
Mm.
Like that's kind of how I'm interpreting it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think there's so much in the more you can sit with more parts of yourself, the less need there is to run or the to rush out of there. Or sometimes I think, even when I think of the rush and the urgency, sometimes it was on behalf of distraction. Oh, I don't want to feel that. Let's rush out of here as well. So I think that can play a part as well.
Mm. I think as you're talking, what I'm hearing is where you are, where you've got to, what your awareness is now. So I'd like to maybe invite us to take a step back for a moment as well, because you've described your story as one that's not about the big moments per se, but about slowly noticing the small ways in which you are overriding yourself, which is something that you've just been
Mm.
describing. And I'm really interested, can you take us back to how that awareness first started to show up for you? and maybe how you felt that in your body. What were the signs that you were noticing in your everyday life?
Yeah, I think it was it was all of a sudden, I think, realizing, I think I mentioned it just before, that there was a general tension throughout my everyday. It was always thinking ahead as well. So from a mind point of view, my thoughts were always thinking ahead. Or we don't have time to feel that, we've got to get this done. Or, oh, I feel tired, we don't have time to be tired, we've got to get this, and like look at the to-do list, and all that. So mentally there was always a thinking ahead and a moving forward. In the body, when I speak to that tension, that was, and I know I mentioned this a lot, but it was the jaw clenching. It was holding my breath. That shallow chest breathing you get. There was tension in my shoulders. I was holding my chest. My breath was shallow and short, and it was just like a constant bracing and a vigilance. And it was more, yeah, like constantly the mind was on scanning what needed to be done next, what I had to do next, what I had to do, where I needed to be, what was happening. And so it was not actually having the time or the space, or probably even the capacity, if I'm honest, to stop and feel what it was in that moment. It was just a constant overriding to get to the next thing, to get to the next thing, to get to the next thing, because yeah, it was just constant.
And I think people can relate to that feeling of constantly moving ahead, getting ahead, next thing, next thing. And for a lot of women, I would imagine that we think this is the norm, right? This is what we do. So, how did you go from this being the way you do things to that realization that actually that wasn't right, and that was something that needed potentially correcting?
To be honest, I think it was a message from my body. It became really loud. And other times, probably not so loud. So, yeah, when I speak to my jaw tension, for example, that led to headaches and that led to migraines. The body was, giving me these signals. There was this fatigue that rest couldn't fix. I could sleep and I wasn't restored. Or I'd get sick and I'd rest and I wasn't getting better. And I think it wasn't so much of a tiredness, it was just that the body and the nervous system was overloaded. So I really think the first step was stopping and listening to my body. That's how it played out for me. I think taking the time to really respect that the body is where the wisdom is. So the fact that kind of accepting there was a frustration when these things would show, like I don't have time to be tired. I don't have time for a headache. I have things to do. But then when you stop, well, when I stopped and I thought, this isn't my body malfunctioning, it's speaking to me. And that was kind of a wake up call. It was just these constant little things. And I thought, you know what? Let's not be frustrated by those symptoms anymore. Let's get curious and find out, yeah, what my body's trying to say.
Mm. I suppose this might be going into the weeds a little bit, but just because I think this is really interesting. Just from that as well, and thinking about the woman that might be listening, what was it that piqued your curiosity there?
To be honest, I genuinely started thinking, can I really be this broken? Like, what am I
Mm.
doing that is causing all these symptoms? Like, if there's these constant symptoms and I'm becoming so aware of them now, and they're sort of shouting at me now, then what am I missing? What's happening here? And I really do think it wasn't a huge, big overhaul. That wasn't a aha moment and everything changed. It was just, yeah, taking notice of those small moments and, yeah, just stopping and kind of thinking, oh, my breath is quite, short and tight here. What could that be on behalf of? Or, geez, I've got a headache today. What could that be from? Or why am I so
Mm.
tired looking
Mm.
back? But I will say, I think it's so important to differentiate between curiosity and self-judgment, which I probably did have times where, there was this voice that then would come on going, you've been doing too much. Why have you been doing this? So I think it's really important to differentiate between curiosity and self-judgment in that
Mm.
spot.
I think what I hear from you, you keep referring to the little things, but it sounds also like the little things got so consistent that you almost had no other choice but to stop and listen because the alternative was, a railroad crash at the other side.
100%. I do still stand by that. Yeah, maybe a line to my story would be when the body gets so loud that you have to listen, because it's the accumulation of those little whispers, and then yeah, this is the time to start listening, and potentially there's time to listen when it's whispering, but I missed all those, hence the overriding that we were talking about.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing, Mel. I think a lot of people and a lot of women can relate, hey, and just like missing the little signals, overriding them
Yeah.
constantly, really, and then coming to a point where the signals become so loud that there's no other choice really than to really look at it. What I'm hearing in your story as well is kind of like coming from looking at your sort of like quote unquote your health issues, if we want to label
Yeah.
it or frame it that way, from a more sort of holistic lens. Like it
Mm.
sounds like and it just reminds me of something that we also really stand for in FBR as a and how we teach FBR as a breathwork modality is really through the lens of the body wants to thrive. The body, the mind, the soul, if you will, wants to thrive. And if it's not thriving, why not? And it's
Yeah.
indeed sort of that curious inquiry. So indeed, not self-judgment or blaming, but really coming through the lens of radical curiosity, which I actually believe is such a high form of self-love, to really look at ourselves and be genuinely curious about, hey, what's going on here? And it sounds like that curiosity or that awareness you started to bring to yourself opened the doors into different pathways into your being, and into maybe different emotions. And what I'm hearing is you started to maybe realize that, like I'm kind of like I'm asking the question, but also already framing it here, which is that this is a question. You started to realize that emotions, like energies in motion in the body, were directly or in different forms linked to physical symptoms as well, and how that then also influence your mental state, which is kind of a little bit more of a holistic way of looking at it, right? If we look more through the traditional health system, it's really like, okay, there's a problem there's an illness or disease or problem that shows up. Let's fix it by giving you this pill or giving you this temporary thing that doesn't actually go into the root cause.
100%.
And so what do you feel has brought you into this awareness of actually like these short-term solutions are not working, and I need to dig deeper here? Like, what brought you into that lens of looking at yourself and at your health?
Yeah, I love this question. And I can't go past just mentioning a really important part of having the tools to be able to go into this from like a mind point of view was also through your coaching as well, Sarah. I think I probably wouldn't have had the capacity and the mental tools to go straight into questioning that. But what probably started was the going into those short-term fixes, or those like more mainstream ideas, like, okay, here's a high functioning woman, she can't sleep, she's constantly moving, working, she's got anxiety, here's a pill to fix the anxiety. And I'm by no means against that. I went down that route myself, and I realized it wasn't working. I wasn't getting to the root cause of, well, what's this anxiety on behalf of? And do we have to label it as anxiety, or is it just a high functioning conditioning that I've received? And it was also taking a look around at other women, those close to me and those not so close to me, and realizing, oh, hang on a minute, they're also, going really fast. They've got so much to do. There's so much responsibility. Is this it? Do we all just have anxiety, or is there something else that we can look at specific to each person? So, my anxiety, while we can call it that, it's now what I can look at is I have removed that label, and I'm more like, well, this is because there was self overriding constantly happening. There was an over functioning. There was this idea that I had to hold everything together. I had to hold everyone together. I had to look after everybody first. And like, that's a lot for a nervous system. So no wonder the body started showing signs of, anxiety in quotes. And then, I think from there, I just started going, okay, let's look at each symptom separately, and how can I meet this one, and how can I, soften this one or help this one, and not just call it one label, suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, if I hear yeah, we work with a lot of these things in the trainings and in the spaces as well, in the circles that we hold as well. And we look at different emotions, whether we call them anxiety, depression, fear, anger, joy, which are
ADHD.
ADHD. Yeah, all of these
All
labels,
the
right?
labels.
And the labels can sometimes be useful just to sort of simplify and clarify
Yep.
something, but most of us also do get really attached to the labels. And this is now, I have now anxiety, or I have depression, and I need to do X, Y, Z. And yeah, personally, the way I really look at emotions, which is energy in motion, so energy moving through the body, is as unconscious material. It's simply it's just unconscious. It's what it means. The light of awareness hasn't yet had the opportunity to shine on that emotion, onto that energy, and therefore it's driving us in the background. And then the symptom or the result of that is quote unquote anxiety. And I feel this is what I've personally really seen from you in the circles that we've set. It is the deeper realization into that of like, hey, if I actually can sit with my grief, there's less anxiety. Oh, that's interesting, right?
Yeah.
How is grief related to quote unquote anxiety? Or if I can sit with the anger, right? You spoke also
Yeah.
to how you've really learned to embrace this part of you that was just quite angry. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what happens if I sit with anger, and maybe it's actually not anger, maybe it's power that wants to be
Yeah.
expressed and wants to come through. So from at least what I've seen on the outside from you in the spaces, is that there's been a whole different way of you being able to relate to your body and the quote unquote symptoms that were there. And I feel FBR breathwork has really sort of facilitated that deepening process for you. And my curiosity in that was just, what do you feel does FBR as a modality or as a practice has provided differently for you than maybe other tech? Because you've tried many other tools. You've done meditation as well, and other forms of inquiry and work on yourself. And what do you feel makes FBR different for you, and in terms of from your experience?
I think for me, I can, given that sort of capable, functional, holding a lot type of story I held for myself, a lot of my processing and my sort of exploration work on myself was quite mind-based. It was quite cognitive. And there was insights and there was beautiful tools I was given, and I was able to only get so far, I think. And then FBR breathwork allowed me to not throw the mind out, but just allow it to step back and to experience emotions and energies and states without having to have the mind on. I was able to go into somatic experiences or feel into things that I didn't have language for, and I didn't need it. It was just that the body knew what to do, and it knew how to show me how to hold myself, and it didn't actually require the mind. So yeah, if I could sum it up in one piece, it was FBR breathwork brought me into my body, and allowed my mind to step back, which is probably kind of healthy for this over functioning brain sometimes.
Yeah, that's what FBR breathwork does, right? So
Mm,
as we
mm,
start to loop our breath in a conscious, connected way, we go into an altered state. And what that means is that the mind takes a little bit more of a back seat, and the
mm,
language of the body starts to to really speak and come forward. And maybe for people that are familiar with Peter Levine's work, which is also the author of Awakening the Tiger
Tiger.
and In an Unspoken Voice, which is my favorite book of him. Really recommending that read, by the way, if you want to understand more about polyvagal theory, and which is what is the lens that we look through with breathwork as well, with FBR breathwork. But yeah, it's such a powerful way to actually come in contact and intimacy with our bodies, and then really in a safe, held container, in a safe space, start to rediscover these pathways within our bodies, which can reveal so much about our being. Hey, yeah, I totally resonate with that, Mel.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think if we circle back to just in terms of, symptoms and things, and in terms of what I was thinking was my anxiety, one of my biggest things was that I realized that it was actually fear. And the fear was really, really, I suppose, in a way, quite rational. Fear that if I soften, if I let go, will things fall apart? What's going to happen? And I think going into FBR breathwork allowed me to drop into the softness and also the fear, and just going, oh, for starters, I can sit with myself in the fear. That's okay. I don't have to run from that. And also, if I soften, things aren't actually going to fall apart either. And I don't think I could have gotten there through the mind. The mind was way too scared, had way too much of a grip on that. So that was, a really big learning through FBR breathwork for me, just from dropping into the body, and experiencing an emotion.
Yeah, like it's very difficult to think your way out of fear,
100%,
right? Or to think your way out of thinking, which is we can't use the same tool or mechanism to solve the problem on the same level. We need to go deeper, and it sounds like you really realized and discovered that through breathwork. And with FBR breathwork, we also really look at breathing patterns and breath mechanics, and we work with how is the breath behaving, how is the breath influencing our thinking as well. So we kind of go a step before the thinking mind into the emotional space, and also the physicality, and how is our physicality influencing our thinking. So we can really start to see these links and these connections, right? Once we start to, as we know with FBR breathwork, the diaphragm we consider kind of to be the fear belt, so to speak. So one of the first things that we really look at as practitioners when we start working with people is how is the springiness of the diaphragm, and how is the diaphragm behaving. And I know for myself, when I first came into the practice, it was so tight. The diaphragm was so tight. And now, 2.5 years later, the diaphragm is just so much looser, and I can feel this more full and capable breath through the whole body, including the diaphragm. And so really breathing diaphragmatically with this technique, I feel it can work really well, particularly with this emotion or this quality of anxiety, and then also fear, and actually starting to feel safe within that fear. As we come over as a practitioner and we hold that part of the body and we just place our hand on the diaphragm, it can really help to support, to feel that nurturing support as well on the body, and to feel the safety to actually breathe into that space, and to loosen the diaphragm, which can, I know for myself, I don't know, Mel, about you, but for myself, it was like this loss of control, like this fear of loss of control as the diaphragm started to expand, and then at some point finding safety within that again. And so layering that, right, pulsing into that, and then finding safety in this more vibrant, full breath, which then allows for more vibrant, full life. Thank you so much for sharing that. I can really relate to your story there as well.
I've had a very similar experience with my diaphragm, and I genuinely think maybe it's even helpful right now for our listeners to explain where the diaphragm is, because I didn't know. So when we say diaphragm, how would I explain this correctly? Like, it's just in that squishy part in between your ribs. Is that where you'd say it is? Yeah, if you put your hand there, that's where your diaphragm sits. And I'll be honest, even recently I've had everyday moments where I have realized, like, I'm now more aware of where my diaphragm is through the breath work that we do. But I've had moments where I can feel it brace all of a sudden and tighten, and I'm like, oh, that's my diaphragm bracing. Here's some fear. So let's sit down and get curious about this, even if it's just for like a pause for 30 seconds. And I'm like, oh, what's happening there? And I'm able to just sort of like remind myself I'm safe, unpack what it is. Normally it's on behalf of all the things I have to do. Yeah, so I can relate to that diaphragm too. Yeah.
Something that I think's really interesting, which I think people get excited about modalities that are working for them in general, but I've not seen this with any other modality in the way I have with FBR breathwork is how many people experience that for themselves and then decide they need to have this practice to be able to spread this practice for other people as well. And that's something that occurred for you, Mel. And I'm just
Hmm.
wondering, what was it? What was inside you that felt moved to not only have this as a practice for yourself, but to do this work and to do the training and to work with others in this way as a practitioner?
Yeah, thank you so much, Beck. Great question. Obviously, and you mentioned it in the question, was my first-hand experience of it, and that I saw that it worked for me in terms of what I was working through and dropping me down in my body. And I thought, oh my gosh, I would love to share this with others. I do have a helper in me. So I was like, oh, I want to share this with the world because it actually works. So it was definitely my first-hand experience. When I say works, sorry, for clarity, I mean, I noticed all these amazing positive impacts it had had on me and how it was making my life feel more easeful and I could understand myself more. And I think from that, there is a real devotion to the truth that I think this work brings in. I think you can't run from yourself. You can't run from your parts. And this is, yeah, I feel like I'm getting a bit emotional talking about this, but I think through being able to hold myself through parts that I never thought I could, that I would have thought as messy or ugly or shameful. And man, I've had journeys where I've sat with my shame and my guilt and your unworthiness, and I think to be able to sit with that, I want to help people be able to do that themselves. I want to welcome people in as they are and say, hey, those parts that you think are too much or too ugly or you can't sit with or you're ashamed of, like, let's go there. Let's breathe together and go there. Like, it's obviously ultimately whoever comes in for a journey, it's their journey, but they're not alone in that. And we can sit with parts of people's selves that they wouldn't ordinarily be able to do. And I mention that because that's what this technique has taught me, that I can do that with myself. And that has given me so much freedom and so much liberation. And I want that for others.
Mm. What I hear from what you're describing is something incredibly special, right? This idea that we can face these parts of ourselves from a place of complete safety
Mm,
and find it within us to hold some grace for them, almost find some love, compassion to be with them as opposed to, exiling them into the
yeah.
shadow, which I think for most of us, we have those parts of us that I know for me, when I feel one of those parts come up, it's there's an ickiness to it that comes up in my body. It presents, and I can feel it right down really low in the pit of my stomach. And to be able to face those parts and allow that sort of icky, well, for me, as I said, that ickiness to lift and just to be with them. It really reminds me, and Mel, you're a mum, so I think you could probably relate to this. If my daughter's throwing a tantrum or something, and there is this want, I suppose, especially for me, because sometimes I can be triggered by sound to want to leave the room and go somewhere into the quiet, right? But I don't. I'm often sitting there in the room with her while she's having this experience until she finds it within her to soften. And then we sit there together until we've sort of come. And I know this is co-regulation, but it's this softness that comes to her, that just sitting there with her allows. And I think what you're describing is the same. And you're referring to parts, and the reason why parts IFS, internal family systems, the reason for the name internal family systems is because what was looking at family systems, the realization we have the family systems within us as well. So it's the same sort of thing that you're describing. Being able to sit with these parts in that level of grace is so beautiful. We witness our ability to do it for others. And I think being a mum, being an animal mum, being a sister, we see that practice. We often don't see that practice for ourselves because, as you described earlier on, we're so busy, we're trying to get move from one thing to the next. We often don't even notice the parts. And when we do, they just get shoved down, and that's when they get exiled, right? So I just really love this way that you spoke to that, and how beautiful to really have felt into it the way you have, and then be able to offer that to others as well. I think really importantly, when we work with people over a therapeutic arc, it's maybe unlikely, although maybe people do come straight in and face those parts, but over a therapeutic arc, you'll start to see more of those parts emerge as more safety comes online, and that's where that magic that you described happens. And oh my goodness, it is so magical.
I was going to just ask a question from that back as you described it so beautifully around the different parts and how it influences and or how it's internalized within us. Yeah, this family system and how that's internalized within us, and how we can, as we start to take ownership of those parts within ourselves, yeah, can change our internal landscape. And Mel, I'm also curious to hear from you as you've noticed you changing your internal landscape. Have you noticed any maybe ripple effects of that into your relationships, maybe with your partner or with your children or at work or with your family? And if so, what kind of changes have you noticed?
Yeah, this is a great question. How long have you got? Yeah, so many ripple effects. What's really beautiful is I've had moments where I've been able to be more of myself and speak more authentically. And to be honest, the biggest part for me has been having boundaries. Obviously, we've spoken to it before, but the story here is I'm, that capable, functional woman who, is a mum, an employee, a manager, a sister, and I do everything, and I do everything for everyone. So to find some self energy behind that and think, hang on a minute, I have a voice and I can use that and set boundaries. Yeah, so that's had a huge effect in my relationships, and positively, definitely for me. And for some people it hasn't been all that convenient that I found my voice. So there has been ripple effects in terms of that as well. My slowing down is also one of my biggest ones. So it's my voice, and slowing down is the two big ones for me. And I had to laugh the other day. At the moment as we record this, we're on school holidays, and I've been really trying to just stop over functioning and slow down a bit. And one of my children said to me the other day, "Oh, Mom, you're so slow these school holidays." And in my head, I wanted to do a
Love that.
cartwheel and jump up and down. from my
Amazing.
child's point of view, yeah, it wasn't actually a positive thing. He was like, get out, take me to the beach. I want to do things. But just to hear one of my kids just mirror that back to me, it felt so good because I think I need slowing down, but I think so does, we speak of a family system. So does my whole family. My
Mm,
overfunctioning and my pace kept my children at that pace, kept my husband at that pace, and kept the whole family at that pace. And so while it's me as well needing to slow down, I think there's also a learning in my whole family system at home, slowing down as well and being able to stop.
Yeah, so powerful to hear you describe the effects of you slowing down and had that the effect that is
mm,
having on your family and those around
Mm,
you. And I just
yeah.
wonder, just as you're describing some of the concepts you've been working on and working through, is like you mentioned before that you felt like you were the one that sort of needed to fix everything and everyone and needed to make sure everyone was okay and sort of be on top of everything.
mm.
And I was wondering, that sounds more, if I look at it through the lens of sort of polarity integration, which I work with a lot with clients as well, that comes more from sort of the masculine doing, or the
Yeah.
masculine maybe fixing, doing, staying active, productive, making sure everything is okay, taking responsibility, action orientated, etc., assertive.
Mm,
Yeah, all of these kind of qualities. And it sounds like the slowing down is also moving you more into more the feminine space, yeah, and
mm.
more the receiving kind of space. And I'm curious around, have you noticed changes in that in terms of your capacity to receive support maybe from your husband or from your children or your family, or to have you noticed maybe different parts of you being more nurturing potentially? I'm just naming some
Mm,
qualities that tend to be more sitting in the feminine of us, which is more the space within us. This is, by the way, gender irrelevant, so both male and females have masculine and feminine energies. But yeah, applying it to male, to your life and to your everything you're sharing, the qualities of the feminine being more receptive, more nurturing, more letting go and surrendering, and more flowing, yeah, as opposed to maybe
mm.
controlling. Are these parts that you've discovered in yourself potentially as you started to slow down more? And if so, how did that influence your life?
Yeah, I definitely, that polarity of the masculine and the feminine is definitely at play here. I did live from my masculine, and I say did, I mean, I still do, obviously, in different areas, but I led all the time. That was sort of like my main space that I came from. I felt that softness, or those feminine qualities like openness and vulnerability, I really felt like they were weakness, and I didn't feel safe in them because I thought there was this need, and I think it probably goes back to that urgency I spoke about, to always be on and to doing things and to holding everything together and to controlling everything and running this tight ship that nothing ever went wrong. And yeah, I didn't feel safe in letting go or surrendering or receiving. Yeah, Sarah, that's a big one for me to receive. So I've started to become more comfortable in softness and slowness. And I know we've just spoken to it, but that's definitely been available through my FBR breathwork practice. And I've been able to receive, but it's interesting, upon having that open up to me, there was also this play and this question of worthiness to receive. Am I worthy to receive? I always felt like I had to be the one giving because I was earning my value and I was
Yeah.
earning my worthiness. Yeah, I can hear you agreeing with this, Beck. But yeah, allowing that softness and the ability to receive did bring up a whole other exploration of, oh, hang on a minute, do I feel worthy to receive? So that's
Mm,
been a beautiful, tender exploration. There's definitely more of a comfort now in softness and receiving, but I do still feel that, and we speak of parts, I do still feel that little part of me that comes on and I feel the tingling in my gut and I'm like, oh, hang on, am I worthy to receive here? Can I stop? Have I done
mm,
enough to rest? Have I
mm.
earned this? Yeah, which I'm assuming there would be other listeners out there who can probably resonate with that too.
And I think that's such a really good point that you describe, Mel, that you still have these parts that come up, and I I have a client at the moment, actually. I get this with clients that they come in and one of them uses language like, "Oh, I think I'm nearly fixed," or "I think I'm nearly healed,"
Mm,
or "I think I'm nearly at the end of my journey." And I love that you describe these parts still come up, because we're not going through this process. It's not about removing the parts altogether. We don't want to remove them. They're part of us. So it's more about working with them, being with them, noticing when they arise. And as you said, now there's a noticing when the part comes up, and you can then be with that part, understand whether or not it's right for that part to take the lead in that moment, or do we want to create safety for that part to pair back? And I think that's just such an important piece that you described there for our listeners as you go through the process of healing, or the work that you do on yourself. It's not a process of eliminating anything. It's creating this beautiful awareness of the canvas that is ourselves and how it all interplays, and then noticing what patterns arise. When do we want that pattern to arise? When do we no longer need that pattern to arise? And still recognizing that that belongs somewhere within us as well. Even if we're
yeah.
saying this no longer is useful, we might find that it is useful at a later date as well. So we're not necessarily removing anything.
Yeah, I love that, Beck, and I think I mean, it almost goes back to, I suppose, my answer to Sarah's first question this today, which was, what's so alive in me right now? And I agree with everything you've said. I feel like, and this has been a big part of my healing, but it's been, yeah, just to hold myself, and that includes all those parts, to hold every single part of it, of yourself, sorry, every single part. And that's self-love. And you can
Mm.
be in a messy, uncomfortable moment with an energy that you may not normally like shame, but just hold yourself in that. It's not to get rid of that. Yeah, that is really alive for me right now. And I love that you've circled back to that, because for me personally, I'm, yeah, not healed or even healing. I'm just learning to hold myself with all the emotions that come up.
Mm.
Yeah, it's so beautiful.
Yeah, it's an ever lived inquiry as we keep on
Mm,
living and exploring, and new parts arise within us as different moments require a different part for us to maybe step forward or step back. And so it's always a discovery and exploration, and simply bringing awareness with that open, loving curiosity towards ourselves in the
mm,
moment allows this work to really live us. Yeah, and for us to
Mm,
live this work as a lived process of embodying rather than embodiment, maybe
mm,
even, as we
mm,
just come deeper into the body, into different parts of ourselves. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Mel, around also you learning how to receive more, and that you felt
mm.
like previously you would only be quote unquote worthy to receive if you've done X, Y, Z, or if you did your
yes.
to-do list, or if you had given X, Y, Z. And I think a lot of people resonate with that. I definitely resonate that within myself, and like the ability to receive without conditions.
Yeah.
Mm,
It's a big one, right? And it makes sense. I mean, if we look at the system and how we're all being raised, but mainly in the West is what I'm referring to now, is that we are raised through a schooling system that praises us for achievement and what
Yeah.
we've accomplished and what we can give, and to really come back into deeper parts of worthiness
Mm,
and belonging to ourselves. Yeah, I think it does require us to really face come into relationship with our innate worth.
yeah.
Before we've done anything, before we've lifted a single finger, we are worthy because
Yeah.
we are alive, you know. And I think we look at nature in that way. We look at a tree and we don't go, how much have you achieved today, and are you worthy to stand
mm,
here? You know,
Mm,
like it's just this obvious thing. But then when we come to humans, we apply a whole different lens, you know, and it is this lens of value and worth, and how much can we exchange it at. And I think it's pretty much what the whole world is driving on, like on this I mean, look at the economy. It's all around proving or improving yourself, pretty
Mm.
much, right? And so to offer a modality here that is almost going the radical opposite way in terms of, I mean, it goes with that, of course, and we still invite in, or I invite in success and achievement as well, because I love it as well. But where is it coming from, right? I think that's the
Mm.
inquiry. Is it coming from a place of unworthiness and really needing to fill the void within us somehow and achieve more and more and more? And also, when is it ever enough, right? When
Yeah.
is it enough? Where do we come to the point of like, actually, now it's enough, you know? Or are we sharing our work with the world from a place of wholeness, or at least fullness, to some decent extent or degree, that we feel like we're more in service? Yeah. And
Mm.
so I guess that brings me to my next question for you, Mel, is like, what is really, as you share this work in the world with the people in your one-on-one practice and in the circles that you're facilitating as well, what is it that you hope people to feel in your presence? What is it that you bring to the work that is that you hope that is going to support people in their lives in a variety of ways?
My my biggest thing, well, first and foremost, one of the things I definitely aim to offer every session is safety. But when I say that, I mean the fundamental sense of safety, but also just safety to be met exactly as you are. There, I know that from myself, I probably used to perform. And it's funny, I don't mean perform as in, oh, I'm so great, I'm healed, but I would perform what healing was happening and what wasn't, or I would have a certain image that I wanted to portray of where I was or what I was up to or how I felt about something. So to drop those masquerades for both myself but for everybody and just be met exactly how you are. And I mean the quote unquote good parts and bad parts and the ugly parts and the dark parts and the parts that you hate of yourself, bring those too. I feel that I do feel really passionate about that, just being able to meet people exactly how they are when they come into either a circle or a one-to-one session. And I think that's so important for women too, because I'm not suggesting all women are out there performing, but we're definitely overriding ourselves. We overfunction, we hold it together, we quite often seemingly put other people first. And yeah, just come in and be who you are. You don't have to worry about any of that when you come in.
Yeah, and I mean, for many of the people that I work with, I know that can be even just a tricky question, right? Of like, who am I even,
Mm,
or what do I really
100%.
stand for? Or what
Yep.
are my beliefs and values? And I find in my personal clinical space as well is that is often also a reason why people come, is that they want to
Yeah.
discover what is really actually true for them. Yeah, what
Mm,
is really in alignment, what is really underneath the layers of conditioning and expectations from society or parental figures or whomever, like what is really true in a deeper way. And I feel that this technique can really support a process into that as well. So for people, women looking to deepen their alignment with themselves and to deepen their what is why are they really here, you know?
mm,
And we can go
mm,
through different phases in life through that as well, where we are shape shifting maybe our roles or our identity as well. But I find this practice brings clarity, yeah, whether that is to who we think we are or need to be, or whether that is to what we are actually capable of. No matter what gets revealed, so to speak, it does provide clarity, because what I've seen is that the breath doesn't lie. Like it shows us what's there. Yeah.
mm.
And it
Yep.
shows us, yeah, the tender, sometimes difficult parts, and also so much beauty and joy. And I know for a lot of women that I have in my practice, that can be really difficult to embrace. You know, we talk about maybe the more difficult emotions of like the shame or the unworthiness or the
Mm,
or the guilt or the fear, or all of these more quote unquote difficult emotions. But I see so many women having so much difficulty. And I guess it's like one side is the same as the other, because we are working with oppositions and polarity, and one can't exist without the other. Because in the unworthiness, we also find our worthiness, right? So, but yeah, what I was going to say is that I see so many women also struggle to actually step into their joy, into their light, into their sexuality, into their sensuality, into what it really means to be a woman, and what that really can feel like. And yeah, I guess my curiosity for you, Mel, is around what have you seen so far in the women in your space, and the people that you've worked with so far, in terms of maybe some of the things that they have learned to really step into or embrace about themselves that makes them feel really alive and joyful in the world?
Yeah, I love this question. I have a client that comes to mind straight away, and she came in and she felt what had started happening, and I love this, was there was a fire starting in her, and there was this questioning of the conditioning she had received her whole life, that as a female she had to, the typical functional, capable, hold it together, put everyone's needs first, her children, her husbands, her family. And she started, something woke up, and I'm not quite sure what started it, but she came to me and she said, I don't want to do this anymore, but I don't know how to not do it. So we spoke, about it, and then dropped into the body, into the breathwork session. And she's had a few sessions under her belt now. So we are on a therapeutic arc. What she's finding more every day is that the questioning came on first, but now what's coming on is the fact that she doesn't have to actually give into that, which is allowing her to look after herself first. And with that, interestingly enough, she's actually found her neck tension has dropped. So as she drops this pattern of having to look after everybody else, and she's finding more of herself, her neck tension is dropping. So while that's not specifically joy, I know you specifically asked about joy, but in her finding herself, she's noticing, difference in her body, and she's able to now put herself first, but not feel shame for doing that, or guilt because, she quote unquote has to put everybody else first. That's been one of my most enjoyable therapeutic arcs that we're on at the moment, because she's really realizing that it doesn't have to go that way. And I think it raises the point. I think it's really important to question that conditioning that we've received, and we may not even be aware of. Some listeners may be sitting here thinking, oh, we've been conditioned. I didn't even know, because I do think I was one of those people too. So yeah, that's probably the story that comes to mind first, just watching someone question that conditioning and then find herself and then notice the difference in her body.
There are little pockets in our world that tries to go against that conditioning, right? You go on a plane and they say, put your own mask on first. But so much of everything else puts us in this position where we feel like we should come after everything else. But we can't be there for everything else if we don't put anything into ourselves as well. And I think this is such a beautiful, gentle way to come back to that realization, to actually feel into what does it mean to put on my mask first, and how
Yeah.
can I then be there to support anyone else if, if all the systems are failing and our plane's going down, right? And so I just really love that you described this moment for her where she got to experience that. And yeah, there are little pockets of it, but mostly, particularly as women, where they're running around for everyone else, forgetting I need to put my own mask on
Mm.
first.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think I mean, for me, I know that plays out and did play out. And I think one of the reasons that made that so hard to start finally being able to put myself first, or to even think of myself, was the shame and the guilt. and probably the unworthiness, like we spoke to before, because going against a story that we're all conditioned, or most of us are conditioned, I should say, through external factors that's the role a woman should play almost. Yeah, that makes it really difficult to grapple with that.
Yeah, but I'm really curious about, so as a last question, as you've really spoken to, how this work has really landed in your system, and also the ripple effects that you see that work in your system having on your direct environment, and now also in your work and in your sharing of this beautiful practice called FBR. Yeah, my question for you is there anything that you feel most committed to either protecting or honoring in this work as you start to share it with more and more people in your clinic, in your space?
Yeah, I think what feels really important for women and those that are coming to see me, that we rarely get met in where we are and what we're feeling deeply. And I'm so comfortable with what's actually there. I know I mentioned it before, but I've held myself through my own both joy and darkness. And I think that's something that we really speak to in FBR breathwork, is that we can only hold our clients through something we've held ourselves through. And I have opened myself up to so much of myself and held myself through so many of my energies and emotions and parts, that I genuinely feel so comfortable for women to, yeah, just turn up. And men, of course. I do hold sessions with men, both women and men. Yeah, but just who are holding a lot, they don't get met in that. Yeah, come along as you are. I have a beautiful space down in Sydney, in Cronulla. The rooms are beautiful. It's got a really nice energy. And yeah, I welcome anyone in to my one-to-one practices that are, yeah, both men and women who, yeah, just wanting to be seen as they are. We spoke to the truth that this work brings, and that's something I hold myself in, just truth and honesty in this practice. And also that's what it can give everyone. Yeah. So yeah, totally comfortable with being what's actually there, and I welcome anyone in.
Awesome. Thanks, Mel. Thank you so much for sharing. And
Thank
yeah,
you.
I learned a lot today as well. And
Yeah.
look forward to how this is gonna deepen.
So that's all from us today. Thank you so much for tuning in to We Are Woman. I hope today's conversation gave you something to reflect on, to feel into, or to carry with you into the rest of your week. Please make sure to click subscribe on your favourite podcast platform so you never miss the latest episodes as they drop. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a woman that would find it helpful, because this isn't just our podcast, it's all of ours, together. You can also follow us on Instagram at We Are Woman Podcast to stay connected, share your thoughts, and join our growing sisterhood. We've got some very special events planned and would love for you to be a part of them. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being exactly who you are.